Hello, good morning. You can't respond like this after what Nick just did. Good morning.
Can I hand you this mic?
Good morning. I don't know what's happening at this stage. I don't know. I'll look for the class prefect of this side, and we'll carry that person. Good morning. Right, do I have some Kenyans in the house? Yeah. We live in, and you don't have to let us go this way. Do I have some Kenyans in the house? Okay, so my people from Kenya, can we do this one? Welcome my way. It's only those who understands. If you don't understand, see a Kenyan. Finally, we are the final day of ICT 4D 2026. It's been a power-packed 3 solid days, and today we're trying to tone it down, and then we get out with whatever has been shared. And I love the conversation that was going on here this morning. And to our friends joining us online, we want to say thank you for being with us for these past days, and we really appreciate that. Let's give them a round of applause for all our virtual participants for all these days, making it possible for us to interact with them wherever they are. Thank you very much. Did you hear anyone saying, I saw you? Any of your friends? Haven't any of your friends seen you who are watching online? Don't you have friends? Why? I'm sure someone saw you and said, I saw you at the ICT 4D and I saw you doing well, yeah? But if not, I have seen each and every one of you, and it's good having all of you here. Hope to see you for the next one. We're going to be present as well. Are you with me? To kickstart this morning section, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you're ready as I'm also ready. Our first speaker for the day happens to be a computer scientist and an executive director of an institution I'm going to share with you soon. This first speaker of ours has been recognized among the world's 100 most influential people in digital government and top 30 women in data. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready to receive our first speaker for the final day? I'm feeling the vibe now. So ladies and gentlemen, help me make welcome our first speaker for today. No other person than Lynette Kwamboka, who is the Executive Director of Institute for Development Data. Ladies and gentlemen, let's show her some love. Show her some love as she comes. Keep doing it till she gets onto the stage. Come on. Shout all you can shout. Say all you want to say till you meet her on stage.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Lynette Kwamboka, and I am the Executive Director at the Institute for Development Data. I also represent Data Science Limited, and I hope that the next 15 or so minutes that I have with you are going to be amazing. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that I'm very passionate about, and that is data. So you best believe that the next 15 minutes are going to be very interesting and very insightful. And specifically, I'm going to talk about the political economy of data in Africa and why Africa is lagging behind. But don't you worry, I also come with some solutions. I love maps. Does anyone else in the room love maps like me? Yeah? Yes. And when I could make different slides, but I only have 15 minutes. So I just Googled rate of in the world, just rate of anything in the world. And then I was specific and said maps. I'm a computer scientist, so we're told you have to use your keywords very well. And when you look at the rate of anything in the world, you will always see Africa shining. for whatever reason. If you just looked at, if you showed this to a 5-year-old, they would say there's one part that keeps shining. So if you think about the rate of literacy in the world, there's a reason Africa has a different color. If you look at the rate of education, the rate of investments, the rate of fertility, you would think that with the declining global population, the rate of fertility, Africa has the darkest colors, so it might be a good thing, but then it's like, oh, that's overpopulation. You can't even feed your population, so maybe that's not a good thing after all. So what can we do about this? How can we change this? Why is Africa lagging behind in most things that you would look at? So this brings us to the data asymmetry, and if there's anyone from Google, I apologize. I did not mean to put you on the spot here. But when you go to Google Data Commons and you ask, you would think that Google has all the data about the world, right? And you just find out what is the rate of milk production in Africa. The result for Africa will tell you, sorry, there was no relevant statistics about this topic for Africa. The end. If you find the same thing about India, it will at least give you a map of where India is, and then tell you, yeah, we also don't have that data, but here's some statistics you could look at for this particular country. To be very honest, I made this slide a few weeks ago, so this morning I was like, let me see if they have updated it. And today, they tell you that, some of the data sets they have about Africa are from 2018. But when you ask the same question about America, well, you not only get the rate of milk production in America, but you get it broken down to state level. You get it at farm level and, for farmers and commercial farming. You get very disintegrated data about milk production in America. But then Africa, and I love to think that Africa is a country, different conversation, there's nothing from the largest provider of data or the largest holder of global data. So there really is a problem, and we need to talk about this problem. So Africa's data scarcity, we're told that less than 5% of global medical data originates from African populations. Anyone from Kenya or anyone from an African country? You've heard about the US and African countries' medical data agreements, yeah? And there's always that question of, what does that mean for us? And why is it important? But why are we fighting it also? America has said they want access to Africa's data, medical data, yeah? And some of us say, yay, this is a good thing because it means there's going to be about $1.6 billion invested into the infrastructure and the data. But some of us are also saying, nay, what about data sovereignty? What about reciprocity? If we're giving Americans our data, why can't Americans give us their data? Yeah? So why are we not having these conversations? These differences and the different issues that come from this also tell you about where we sit as a continent, as countries in this continent, and what it means to have the power. When you don't have the power and you don't have the resources, you really cannot dictate anything. A lot of what you get is dictated. I have been in this field for a very long time, 16 years to be specific. And I have been working on different initiatives. And I have seen the asymmetries and the scarcity that we think that we have. And in most cases, we have what we call data deserts. And what are data deserts? There's a lot of data. Go to any Kenyan or Tanzanian or Zambian or Zimbabwean government institution, and you will see stacks and stacks of paper. There's lots of data collected. So even in the definition of what a data desert is, it really does not capture our realities as well as it could, right? Because there's a lot of data. There's data everywhere. But then, because of technology and digital revolutions, there's a question of, does the data we have really become useful? It might exist somewhere, but is it useful? If I went to a hospital in Nairobi and I went to a hospital in Nairobi, do those two hospitals have data about me? Chances are no. So you are stuck. You know, you find someone has an accident 1,000 kilometers away and they still insist, take me to this particular hospital because they have all my medical records. But why is that the case? And why can't that change? We are in an AI and very connected world. And what we see when Africa is left behind, it's not because we don't have the data. We have a lot of data. We have a lot of data from very historical practices when our forefathers used to determine the weather with the sounds of the birds and, you know, the gathering of the insects, to today when I can find out if it's going to rain in 5 minutes. But a lot of this data is not digitized. A lot of this data is not available. And what happens when we live in an interconnected world, in a truly flat world, is we're left behind, and the things that we are talking about, no one is listening. And when no one is listening, you are not represented. So what are some of the sectors that we can start the change in? And the problem that we have is sometimes we try to do everything. You know, there's AI, so let's try to do AI for everything. But what if we actually really focused on what mattered? And I could be biased. This is probably what matters to me, and you can figure out what matters to you and start there. Medical data, AI-ready data, economic and social data, but also trust and access gaps. We have seen that bureaus of statistics collect a lot of data about countries in Africa, but then our leaders, our presidents, our members of parliament, governors, senators, our academics would rather quote Bloomberg than the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, right? They would rather say, according to the BBC, than according to X Bureau of Statistics. How can we build the trust around data? Because once we start, it's the demand and supply rule of economics. Once we create that demand, the supply will flow. And once the supply starts to flow, those systems will be enhanced to be able to provide the right kind of information. So the political economy behind the data deficit, that map shows us the interconnection of flights, local flights in different countries. And even in that, as you can see, Africa is not connected. African countries themselves are not connected, and Africa as a continent is not connected. 2 years ago, I went to Niger. Is anyone from Niger? Yeah? The easiest way to get to Niger from Kenya is to go to Turkey and then go to Niger. Yeah? And for me, this map is very important because it highlights very historical practices that we have had and how those practices affect things downstream. We come from a historical position of extraction. We do not add value locally. We do not create the demand locally. It has to go outside to come back inwards. So even our data practices have become exactly that. That we produce, but until USAID, and again, apologies to the Americans, I might have mentioned you too many times, but until an international development organization, for instance, comes and says, we are interested in medical data, so let's invest in medical data. We are interested in education, so let's invest in education. We do not do much about it. For a long time, to anyone who's heard me speak, I speak a lot about a book by Professor Mariana Mazzucato called The Entrepreneurial State. Has anyone read that book? No? Please get a copy. The Entrepreneurial State talks about governments investing in their own technologies and innovations. The fact that Wi-Fi was, a government-backed innovation. GPS, the iPhone, right? We need our government. So while we might have historical issues, we also need our governments to put in the effort. We need our people as Africans specifically to be invested in the cause for us to make any changes around this level of disconnection and disaggregation. So what are some of the structural barriers that we have seen and that we have that could actually help us change? We, of course, have infrastructural gaps. As a Kenyan, whenever I go anywhere, I would say we have the best internet in the world. And I stand by that. It's fast, it's reliable, it's accessible. But someone also said, you know, home is where you don't need a password to connect to your Wi-Fi. So there's some bias there. But then sometimes you use your infrastructure and you're wondering, why can't we do better? Yeah? There's still some breakages that we have within the infrastructure that we have, and there's still some more that we can do. A hot topic at the moment is the government, you know, got into this deal with Microsoft to build a green data center. And then, interestingly, 2 years down the line, realized that they'll need half the energy that is produced to be able to power that one data center. And you know, it's like, did no one do a feasibility study to find this out in good time? So for me, these are some of the things, these are the conversations that we really need to have. And I don't say this to be provocative in any way, but I say this to highlight the issues that we are really facing, generally, for us to be able to progress. Regulatory challenges, we have lots and lots of laws, but a lot of those laws really don't say much, yeah? We have laws about, you know, we want to regulate AI, we want to regulate data access and data privacy and security and cybersecurity. But at the end of the day, the implementation is really still lacking. The human capital limitations. We have very smart people, very educated people. And if you don't learn anything from this speech today, I hope I'm an example of that. But then the opportunities that we have locally are not supporting that. And what happens, in computer science many years ago when I was in school, we used to say, this is akin to having a very powerful laptop and using it for word processing. You have very educated people, but then you're not using that capacity. But we have Kenyans working everywhere and doing very well. We have African people. There was a statistic that the most educated people in America are Nigerians, right? But then the Nigerians in Nigeria, that's a different case. So these are some of the conversations that we really need to have. And of course, we have trust and privacy concerns. That for us to be able to implement technology well, for us to be able to use data well, for us to achieve the positive political economy of data, trust and privacy concerns must be addressed. You will notice that this graph has a source. I don't know if you can see, and this is deliberate. It says the source is AI-generated data. And sometimes you just ask questions. You go on your large language models and you just ask. And you can see the biases there. And sometimes you can ask the question, is this bias or is it actually true that when it comes to Africa in the global data landscape, everything is still lagging behind, almost stagnating really, when everyone else is going to the top, right? I mean, truthfully, the digital economy is working in most African countries, but is this represented in the global stage? And these are the questions that we really need to ask ourselves. So as I said, I'm not all gloom and doom. I also have some solutions. So what are the pathways forward? What are some of the things that we really need to start thinking about? Investing in local data infrastructure, the entrepreneurial state. The governments need to invest in local data infrastructure. The partnerships need to invest in local data infrastructure. Developing African-led data governance. A lot of the laws, for instance, in Kenya, sometimes are a copy-paste of what is happening in the EU and in the UK. And you ask, what is the localization of these laws? Is this actually relevant? Is it practical? So we need to have the conversations around localizing and developing Africa-led data governance structures and strategies. Building capacity through education. Over the last 3 years, my rallying call has been that Africa needs to raise scientists. I have 2 children, 6 and 4, and so you can imagine, as the champion of Africa raising scientists, the conversations in my house are about numbers and science and starting to, of course, become a dictator mom and say, you need to become a doctor. I don't care which kind, just make sure it's a doctor, right? Of course, maybe they'll become DJs and, influencers. But I really hope that Africa, especially for parents, that we can have a common goal of raising scientists. And this is not to say that every child must study STEM, but it's to say that most of us, as a rule, should try for our children to study STEM. When AI was introduced, a lot of us would go and, say, and I've done this, I've made presentations with this saying, show me pictures of the most beautiful woman in the world, and it would show me lots of amazing blue-eyed, blonde, white women. Very beautiful. And then we would get offended. Oh my goodness, why would you show me that? I'm in Kenya, I'm in Africa. Where is the African woman represented? And I say, think about who's developing these applications. It's most likely someone from Harvard, studied computer science. Think about a class in Harvard. Maybe close your eyes for a second. I hope I still have time. And think about a class in Harvard. Who do you see in that room? It's most likely a blue-eyed, blonde, white man. So why would I, as an African woman, think that this person, so far away, is thinking about me and representing me and the things that I want and the things that I know and my experiences and my culture? It might be a bit too late for me. I'm doing my best. But I'm really hoping that the children that we are raising will sit in that Stanford class, will sit in that MIT and Harvard class, or even University of Nairobi, which is my alma mater, and develop solutions that represent us. And for as long as we raise ourselves and the children and our generations, people who are consumers of technologies and not producers of these technologies, the thing we call AI bias will live forever. And in 5 years, we'll be talking about quantum bias. So we need to really focus on our education and on raising scientists. And fostering on multi-sector partnerships, and I think everyone in the room is a representation of that. And close to finally, the solutions are really around innovation through data. There's a lot that we can do in empowering African data development, and empowering African futures. Going back to the question from Nick about what people did that outlasted them. Between 2011 and 2016, I was the project manager for the Kenya Open Data Initiative. Started off at the World Bank, then at the Ministry of ICT. And unfortunately, when I left the project, as many people would say, the project died. So unfortunately, it did not outlive me. But the structural problem was in how the project itself was structured. It was a donor-funded project by the World Bank. I was a consultant at the World Bank, so at that point, I really didn't care much about sustainability, although towards the end, I did, and I did my best. And we did not have enough buy-in within government on matters opening up data. And what happens when you're not bought into a project? When money is good, you take it, and when it ends, too bad, on to the next. So what am I doing about it? Over the last 5 years, I have been working with my team at Data Science to reignite the Kenya Open Data Initiative. And thinking about it, for me, it was, there is still a lot of demand, but 10 years, it's actually been 10 years since I left the project. No one has done anything about it. And being the crazy scientist that I am, brought my team together. We have spent an unimaginable amount of time and resources going through government websites, collecting all the data, including the rate of milk production in Kenya, and put it all in one platform called opendata.co.ke. So hopefully, this outlives me, and hopefully it's something that will continue being used, and hopefully it's something that we are making a contribution, no matter how small, to the AI ecosystem, to the data-ready ecosystem. And here's my call to you all to be involved and to also do something that potentially outlives you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And a round of applause for Lynette Kwamboka. Thank you very much.